with Diontae Johnson and Kendrick Green being placed on the COVID list today, that is a little bit more alarming to me. On the heels of what we had just yesterday, when you talk about the guys that came back, but you lose Joe Hayden and Keith Butler potentially this weekend as well because they're on the COVID list. Like seeing that, I don't like it as much because we know Diontae has been the most consistent and the best receiver on this team this year. I know at times people wanted to say maybe it was Claypool. To me, Diontae as a whole body of work this season has been the number one guy. Even the targets, double-digit targets pretty much every game reflect that. But my concern now is when you talk about attacking this Ravens team, their biggest weakness is defending the pass. When they aren't able to match up man-to-man with guys, it forces them to not be able to be as aggressive in blitz. It forces them to be put in some bad situations. And that it was the part where we're like, man, we should thrive. But now when you're talking about taking away the guy that wins one-on-ones the best, the fastest on this team, I think that could really have a bigger impact than, Joe Hayden and Keith Butler not being out there. And then obviously when we talk about Kendrick Green, that impact is going to be a little bit different because we've saw what J.C. Hassenauer did last week. So it's more so, all right, this is at least he gets that opportunity again without the Steelers having to have this decision, this internal dilemma of do we play the guy that we've had starting all season who's the draft pick, or do we go with the guy who came off a really good game last week and we saw the team be successful?
Discussion, right? After last week, there's no way.
I mean, you would hope it wouldn't be. You would hope it wouldn't be. But how many times have we said this? We say what? You should play the best players. But then how many times we come up here and said, well, they're not doing that because of X reason, because of this, whether it's money, whether it's draft, whether it's whatever. So I definitely wasn't 100% that it would for certain be JC this week. Because even last week, I tell you how surprised I was that when I saw Green in uniform, that they didn't start him because I thought, man, if he's dressed, they're going to play him because that's what they've been doing, regardless of how he's looked out there, good or bad, they're going to put him out there. So that was a surprise last week, but I just didn't think that if he was available and healthy, they couldn't rely on, oh, it's the calf. It can't be this. Like that was the part for me where I thought that, they could legit
dealing with the calf anyway,
right?
Too.
So I was like, they could have legit been thinking about it though. That was my part. So
that would have been a damn shame.
Well, you bring up a good point there as well. But that was kind of my feeling on it, man. What were your thoughts on the Diontae situation and obviously with Kendrick Green being added to the list as well?
Well, Kendrick Green not playing, that doesn't matter because we should be starting J.C. Hassenauer anyway. If we weren't going to do that, as I mentioned, I would have been really disappointed because the offensive line is probably the best it's been all season last week. And JC was a big part of that. You saw him pushing people the correct way, opening holes up for Najee.
I like how you said the correct way. You are foul. Bro,
I'm just saying, bro.
Kendrick going to run up on you. Oh, bro, you just said push it on the right way. Oh, my God.
I wasn't anything against Green. I'm just saying
why you
what I
the
saw
right
from JC.
way?
I'm complimenting JC. Or JD, however you want to call him.
Oh, wow.
Because that's his other nickname.
Oh, it is? I don't even...
You remember that? Last year, Washington, the announcer.
Oh, yeah. JD Hassenauer.
And Ray McDonald.
Who's this JD and this Ray McDonald? Yeah.
Yeah, they're botching up left and right.
Vance Williams. Yeah.
So Kendrick Green, out of the 4 people with COVID on the COVID list, I think he's the one with the least impact, obviously. But Diontae Johnson... I think you're right. He goes to number 1. Yeah. It's more important than Joe Hayden or Keith Butler because he is our number 1 receiver on offense. Who's getting snaps now? McLeod, James Washington, the guy we haven't trusted really all season.
But in a funny way, Diontae not being available will actually benefit, I think, James Washington a lot more because if they have truly viewed him as an outside guy, and if that is the case, since Claypool and Diontae have been healthy all season, it would make sense why they weren't putting James out there once Juju went down and went Ray exclusively in the slot. Now, with Diontae potentially not being out there, that excuse goes out the window because you can't tell me that you don't view him as a slot and you don't view him as an outside guy. It's one or the other.
Even
last week, they took shots to him, but it was at the outside spot. We had the one where it was the over. It wasn't over, which is a long incompletion. That's him on the outside. And I think he was on Diontae's natural side, which is that left side, right? The visiting team sideline. So if Diontae isn't available, because we know what the new COVID protocols, that could change. We just don't know right now because we've also seen guys displaying symptoms, right? and that's not even just been in Pittsburgh, but around the league now. It's been happening a little bit more frequently. I do think, though, with James Washington, he could get that opportunity to come out there and be, I don't want to say featured, but because of how you should attack this Ravens defense in terms of that secondary, I think that James Washington could have a favorable matchup in some instances because he does find ways to get separation. We talk about like other guys and how it's not as consistent. I do think that when James is out there, he gets open.
Yeah.
Absolutely gets open. So I do think that this could low-key be a little bit of a blessing. Just in terms of James Washington and what he could bring from a more downfield threat ability as well. Because we said with Diontae, it's more of that like quick off the line, your slants. Every once in a while he'll give you something deep, but a lot is more short to intermediate. Get him the ball in his hands. Whereas James, he wins, but he can get you downfield as well. For me, I'm excited about that. Because I think it just adds another element.
You're talking me into it a little bit because what I was going to say is that how confident are you really in him taking over? Because we haven't really seen it. We haven't seen the trust in James Washington this year. But you're hyping me up a little bit. At least he could be a decent replacement, and the Ravens secondary is pretty decimated. So maybe he could have a little bit of a game.
But that was the reason why when I kept thinking, like I kept going back and back about like, well, why doesn't James Washington play more? I cut on tape, he wins. I cut on tape, he's getting open, but why isn't his role what it is? And that's when it really kind of clicked for me. I'm like, they just view this dude as an outside guy only, solely. Like we've seen them put Chase inside at times, but they don't really do that with Washington. I don't know why. Because I feel like when you watch him run his routes, he wins. You watch him, he creates separation. I don't care about his intangibles of what times or what, in terms of was he a 4-3 guy versus a whatever guy, but it's like he wins and he knows how to run routes and he typically is short-handed. Now we know it's been a couple of times this season where he's had a drop like all these receivers have, but
he had the fumble against the Titans.
Yeah. But I just think that, man, he's a guy that for him also, he has to be super motivated because this could be his big audition to get paid somewhere.
Yeah.
That's the other part that goes with this. So everything is pointing to him. Like I said, I'm kind of excited to see what he does. And I feel like with Ben knowing how to attack this team, and now you got another downfield guy like Washington, hopefully that will make him be more aggressive in terms of stretching the field and actually completing some of these as well. Because I think that obviously it's going to help the offense out, but it would largely help Najee as well. Because this Baltimore team right now, if they find out it's no Diontae, they're going to be stacking that line. They're going to be filling that box, and it's going to be a rough one trying to run at it.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely going to try to stop the run. I do think Najee will have some success.
Yeah.
That doesn't change where Diontae ranks, though, in terms of the people on the COVID list.
Oh, no, he's definitely
He's still number one. Even if you want to say,
clear cut.
Washington, he could be somewhat of a suitable replacement.
It's still more speculative.
We could talk ourselves into it a little bit. He's still number one because without Joe Hayden, those Baltimore receivers don't scare me. We talked about that yesterday. I think with how Kello's playing, we got Cam Sutton, Trey Norwood. We'll be all right. Mollett coming back. It's Diontae, though. You're right. He's been our number one receiver, at least most reliable. That's even with the drops. I think that's more or less how our receiving cores, though, played this season. It's been, I think, a little disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, Juju being hurt doesn't help, but I had high expectations for this receiver group.
Yeah, I mean, we all did. Let's be real.
Didn't live up. I mean, Diontae, if you look at his numbers right now, he's probably the closest. I'd probably even say my expectations were a little bit even higher, though. Or maybe he fit the pocket. Maybe he was right in the middle. I feel like for
Claypool
Diontae, definitely disappointed.
Yeah, Claypool disappointed me. Juju, obviously he got hurt. James disappointed me, but it wasn't because of him. It was because of the usage. They didn't allow him those opportunities. Diontae, though, I feel like he's right where I thought he would be. I thought he would be like the guy, but not like it's not really clear
nice
cut right
throughout the season, like close catches, like the Chargers.
It's like I feel like he's our guy, but it's not like this drastic separation between him and Claypool, if that makes sense. Like I think that Claypool is behind him, even though Claypool does give you a little bit more explosiveness with the ball, with the big play potential that he is capable of, right? Because I feel like with Chase, it's either boom or bust. It's no in between. Whereas with Diontae, you can get a lot of that in between, where it's just good quality pickups without necessarily the home run.
Game.
Right. With Chase, it's either home run or it's zero. You know, whether you're getting a big catch, big pass interference penalty, or it's this, the usual.
Yeah. Because I thought Claypool was going to emerge as the number one. because he has the most.
I mean, he has all the talent, dude.
What do you consider talent? Because Diontae's got that 6 side-to-side stuff, but talent combined with the physical tools, he has it all.
Yeah.
Just was not able to put it all together this year.
No,
it was
man,
disappointing.
It's crazy,
really
man.
disappointing. Because, if Diontae has this year and he's considered our wide receiver 2 and Claypool's our number 1, then you're saying, nasty, Diontae lived up to expectations. This was a really good season. So maybe I should give him a little bit more credit for that. It was more of Claypool, though. It was disappointing, I think. McLeod, I don't even know what to say.
Well, technically, I would say he's exceeded our expectations because we did not expect him to get anything on offense. Let's be real about it. We didn't expect any offense productivity from him as a receiver.
He hasn't dropped anything.
No, and even last week, he had some big catches, a combat catch down by the goal line that actually helped us go ahead and get the score as well, man. Like I said, with him, it's just, it's capped. And that's part of the issue of why, even though he's playing and he plays well in his own vein, we're frustrated because we feel like guys like James Washington, or even if you up the targets to your Claypools and your Diontae, we just think that those guys give you a lot more ability for big playmaking. Whereas with Ray, we just don't feel like that's going to change. And we haven't seen a reason to think differently either. Like if he was having these big performances or he's, making guys miss and he's, turning a 3-yard gain into a 20-yard gain, that's different, but we don't really see that with him. So that's a lot of the reason why, people are a little frustrated with him.